The city looks different at night. Not because the lights dim, but because something else is missing. Something you don't notice until it's gone. Men. Real men. Good men. The streets are full of women asking the same question. Where did all the good men go? But they're asking it like someone who lost a prize. Not someone who lost a partner. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Good men didn't vanish. They didn't die. They didn't lose their values. They didn't give up. They quietly walked away. Not out of hatred, but out of exhaustion. Exhaustion so deep that silence became safer than love. Exhaustion so heavy that peace became more valuable than connection. Exhaustion so familiar that solitude, for the first time in history, felt like home. This story isn't about disappearing men. It's about why they left. Why they aren't coming back. And why women finally realized they weren't ready for the answer. It didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. Not like a storm, but like a dimming candle. At first, women simply noticed fewer approaches. Fewer, "Hey, can I talk to you?" Fewer, "You look beautiful today." Fewer men offering help, attention, or intention. They thought men were intimidated, or shy, or immature. They didn't understand the truth. Men weren't afraid. They were done. Done with being misjudged. Done with being mocked. Done with being told to stay away. And then being blamed for keeping their distance. The world taught men to approach less, to speak less, to exist less. Men listened. But they didn't stop at less. They stopped completely. It started in public spaces. Gyms. Malls. Offices. Sidewalks. Coffee shops. Places that once buzzed with harmless flirtation became silent. Not because men lost desire, but because they lost permission. The rules changed. Don't approach her. Don't compliment her. Don't ask her out. Don't risk being labeled creepy. So men adjusted. Not angrily. Logically. When society punishes a behavior, men eliminate it. Not emotionally. Strategically. But here's the dark psychological undertone. Men didn't stop approaching because they lost interest in women. They stopped because they lost interest in punishment. Punishment for trying. Punishment for misreading signals. Punishment for simply existing wrong. Men realized something women never expected. If being a gentleman gets me in trouble, then I'll stop playing the role. And so men disappeared. Not into bitterness, but into their own lives, their routines, their hobbies, their ambitions, their peace. And while men rebuilt, women began to panic. Because for the first time, they looked around and saw a dating market full of women, and almost no men pursuing them. Not because men weren't there, but because men no longer volunteered to be hurt. And the silence women are hearing today? It's not rejection. It's the sound of men finally choosing themselves. His name could be anything. James. Elijah. Tund. Marcus. It doesn't matter. Because he represents millions. A man who did everything right, and still became invisible in modern dating. He's not a celebrity, not a model, not a billionaire, just a good man. Steady job, stable emotions, clean heart, quiet confidence, moral backbone. But none of that matters. In a world hypnotized by highlight reels, James doesn't compete with other men. He competes with a fantasy. The curated Instagram boyfriend. The 6'4" model in every TikTok. The luxury travel influencer. The emotionally manipulative man with a perfect camera angle. James is real. But real no longer wins. Women scroll through endless profiles. And every swipe rewires their expectations. More. Better. Higher. Richer. faster, taller, more exciting, more dramatic, more everything. The algorithm feeds desire, but starves satisfaction. And men like James pay the price. Not because he's a bad man, but because he's not augmented by filters and fantasy. The psychology is brutal. When the brain is exposed to abundance, it develops selective blindness. Average becomes invisible. Stable becomes boring. Reliable becomes unimpressive. Good becomes not enough. James doesn't get chosen. He gets overlooked. Not because women don't want good men, but because they no longer recognize one. The digital marketplace rewarded the extremes. The loudest, the flashiest, the most dramatic, the most toxic. Toxic men create emotional spikes, and emotional spikes create addiction. Good men create emotional safety, and emotional safety feels too calm for people raised on chaos. So James stopped trying, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. And when he stopped, the dating market shifted. Women noticed the silence, the absence of good men, the collapse of male initiation. But here's the twist. Good men didn't disappear because they weren't wanted. They disappeared because they were never seen. And now women ask, where are all the good men? They're right where they've always been. Working, healing, building, improving. They're just no longer raising their hands to be ignored. Before we continue, to every amazing listener here, if stories like this help you understand people, if they open your eyes, sharpen your mind, or make you see relationships differently, please like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps this message reach more people who need to hear the truth buried beneath modern dating. You are the heartbeat of this channel, and your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's continue. Men don't break loudly. They don't scream. They don't announce their suffering. They don't say, I'm done. Men crumble in silence. Exhaustion doesn't hit them in a moment. It builds quietly, like water filling a sinking ship. One criticism today, another tomorrow. A comment about his ambition, a jab about his income, a passive-aggressive comparison to another man. Every word is a drop. Every argument is a wave. Every accusation a rising tide. Eventually, men drown without making a sound. Take Michael. He tried harder than he should have. Longer than he needed to, deeper than was healthy. He planned dates. He wrote heartfelt messages. He showed up on time, paid for everything, and apologized even when he wasn't wrong. But modern dating has a cruel twist. Effort from the wrong man is bare minimum, while effort from the toxic man is romantic. Michael learned something traumatizing. Women didn't reward kindness. They rewarded chaos. Why? Because chaos hits the nervous system harder, faster, deeper. A toxic man gives emotional spikes, jealousy, adrenaline, uncertainty, temporary validation, withdrawal, ecstasy, collapse, return. This cycle becomes addictive. It mimics dopamine, cortisol loops. The same neurological patterns seen in gambling addictions. A good man doesn't trigger chaos. He triggers calm. And for someone raised on emotional instability, calm feels like emptiness. So Michael became invisible. Not because he lacked value, but because he lacked trauma familiarity. The psychology is dark. People don't choose what's good for them. They choose what feels familiar, even if what's familiar destroys them. And men like Michael? They get used, drained, discarded, until one day, he stopped trying. Not dramatically, not explosively. He simply woke up, looked at himself in the mirror, and whispered a truth that shattered the illusion. I deserve peace. That sentence became the funeral bell for his participation in modern dating. And here's the part women didn't expect. When a man finally chooses peace, he doesn't return to chaos. He doesn't try again. He doesn't shoot his shot. He doesn't man up. He quietly disappears into a life that love never gave him. And that silence is louder than any breakup could ever be. There comes a moment in a man's life when the noise of the world fades and a deeper truth emerges. A truth he avoided. A truth he feared. A truth he finally learned to embrace. He doesn't need anyone to feel whole. At first, he feels guilty for enjoying solitude. Conditioning taught him something backwards. Men must pursue. Men must chase. Men must impress. Men must provide. Men must prove their worth. Meanwhile, women were told, if he wants to, he will. This created a psychological trap. If a man stops chasing, he is labeled weak, lazy, or unmotivated. But the truth is much simpler. He's tired. Not broken. Just tired. And tired men heal in silence. Not in clubs. Not in endless conversations. Not in rebound relationships. They heal by rebuilding themselves. This is when the transformation happens. He starts hitting the gym. Not to impress anyone, but because strength feels like safety. He starts saving money. Not to fund someone else's lifestyle, but to control his own future. He pursues hobbies again. Gaming, reading, gym, cooking, writing, building, creating. Not because they look attractive, but because they feel like himself. He reconnects with friends who were once considered a bad influence, simply because they gave him happiness. He rebuilds his peace, his identity, his self-respect, and slowly, he realizes something profound. He's happier alone than he ever was with someone who drained him. But the darkest psychological insight is this. Once a man learns how to create his own peace, no woman can offer chaos and expect him to stay. Men aren't avoiding women. They're avoiding emotional cost. The cost of being misunderstood. The cost of being unappreciated. The cost of being taken for granted. The cost of being compared to fantasy men who don't exist. Men have finally discovered their quiet superpower. Self-sufficiency. And when a man becomes self-sufficient, he becomes selective. Not picky. Not arrogant. Not bitter. Selective. Because he knows what his life feels like when it's peaceful, and he refuses to lose that peace again. This is why modern women say they can't find good men. The good men didn't disappear. They learned that peace is the most valuable currency a man can own, and they're guarding it with everything they have. There is a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when a woman scans a room, a restaurant, a mall, a train station, a grocery store, and realizes something unsettling. The attention she once took for granted is gone. Not reduced. Not weakened. Gone. No lingering glances. No polite introductions. No nervous smiles. No respectful compliments. No men trying to impress her. The throne she once sat on. The throne built by male attention, male effort, male pursuit, now stands empty. This is the empty throne effect. A psychological shift powerful enough to break entire dating markets. Women didn't realize how invisible they would feel when good men stopped participating. Because here's the brutal truth. Men were never the prize. Men were the participants, matchers, initiators. builders of connection. Women were the prize, because men treated them as one. But when men stepped away, the entire system collapsed. And now women look around and see a world filled with other women, but no men choosing them. Not because men aren't there, but because they're watching, observing, waiting for respect that never comes, waiting for reciprocity that was never taught, waiting for softness in a world that values dominance, waiting for effort to mean something again. The psychology runs deep. Human beings are wired to crave what pursues them. When pursuit stops, value feels lost. When value feels lost, panic begins. This is why modern women say, "Where are all the good men? What happened to dating? Why doesn't anyone approach me?" The answer is simple. Good men are present, but they're no longer participating in a game that punishes them simply for playing. You can see it on their faces. Men at the gym with headphones on. Men at malls keeping their eyes down. Men on dating apps barely swiping. Men at parties keeping to themselves. Men choosing silence over risk. They used to initiate conversations. Now they protect their peace. They used to ask for numbers. Now they ask for nothing. They used to tolerate disrespect. Now they leave before disrespect arrives. And yet, the saddest part is this. Women think men don't want them. But the truth is darker. Men do want them. They just don't want the consequences. False accusations. Misinterpretations. Mockery. Screenshots. Public humiliation. Social judgment. Rejection delivered with cruelty. Being labeled creepy for being kind. Being seen as boring for being stable. Being compared to fantasies they never agreed to compete against. Men left the throne empty, because sitting there came with a cost no reward could justify. And the throne remains empty not because men vanished, but because they finally learned how dangerous attention can be. Modern dating has a fatal flaw. It looks full, but it is empty. Scrolling through social media feels like browsing a catalog of flawless men. The millionaire entrepreneur. The gym-sculpted Adonis. The emotionally articulate poet. The luxury travel nomad. The charismatic toxic heartbreaker. The tall, rich, magnetic fantasy archetype. These men aren't common. They aren't accessible. Most of them aren't even real. Just curated fragments and filtered illusions. But the brain doesn't know that. It adapts. And through repeated exposure, women form a subconscious belief. I can do better. Better than the stable man in front of her. Better than the respectful man texting her. Better than the loyal, grounded, emotionally sane man offering peace. Because better looks reachable when it exists on every screen. This creates a devastating psychological distortion. Abundance without availability. Millions of women feel surrounded by potential partners, yet remain painfully alone. Why? Because abundance creates inflated selectivity, and inflated selectivity creates chronic dissatisfaction. The good man becomes too plain. The stable man becomes too normal. The emotionally regulated man becomes too safe. The reliable man becomes not exciting enough. And the ones who actually want them become invisible beneath a mountain of fantasies. Meanwhile, the emotionally unavailable men, the ones she waits hours for, the ones who breadcrumb, the ones who flirt but never commit, fill her dopamine circuits like a drug. This is the illusion of abundance. Thinking you have 100 choices, while ignoring the only real options. Thinking you deserve a fantasy, while dismissing the man who brings reality. Thinking the dating pool is overflowing, when in truth, it's evaporating. Here's the dark psychology. The more options someone believes they have, the less satisfied they are with any one option. This is why marriages are failing. Commitment is declining. Ghosting has become normal. Attraction feels unstable. Dating feels impossible. Because when expectations rise to unrealistic heights, no real human can meet them. And good men, the ones who could have been partners, become collateral damage of an algorithm designed to keep women wanting more. Now women say, "I can't find good men." But the truth is not that they can't. It's that they can't recognize one. In a world where fantasy is easier to access than reality, and the men who once tried to stand out no longer bother, because competing with illusions is a game a real man can never win. So instead of playing, he walks away. There is a point in every psychological shift where the system breaks under its own weight. And for modern dating, that point is now. Women still speak about good men as if they are hiding, as if they are rare treasures buried deep, as if they are a mythical species, only found in faraway places. But the truth is far darker. Good men stopped volunteering to be the supporting cast in someone else's fantasy. For years, women selected men the same way they selected luxury handbags, based on appearance, appeal, and status, not character, values, or patience. But something changed. Something subtle and catastrophic. Good men realized they were never being chosen for who they were, only for the emotional labor they could provide. They were considered the fallback plan, the safe choice, the backup option, the stability after the storm, the emotional hospital after toxic heartbreak. Women kept the toxic men for passion, and the good men for recovery. But every recovery leaves scars, and eventually, good men learned to stop being the antidote to a poison they didn't create. So what happens when the men who were once Plan B stop showing up at all? A collapse. A collapse of romantic expectations. A collapse of dating assumptions. A collapse of selectivity built on illusion. Women begin to say, "He's too short. He's too nice. He's too stable. He's too available. He's not mysterious enough. He's not exciting enough. He's not high value enough." But when every good man becomes not enough, something sinister emerges. A shrinking pool of viable partners. And women begin to feel something they've never felt before. Unchosen. Not because they aren't desirable. Not because they lack beauty or worth. But because the men who would have chosen them stopped playing the game. And here is the darkest psychological twist. Women weren't prepared to experience the same emotional invisibility that men endured for generations. For the first time, the mirror is turned around, and the reflection stings. When good men left, they didn't only take their effort with them. They took validation. They took attention. They took affection. They took intention. They took loyalty. They took commitment. Without good men pursuing, women are left surrounded by the toxic, the unavailable, the manipulative, the chaotic, the emotionally reckless, the men who never wanted them for more than convenience, the very men many women chose first. This is the collapse, when the men who want love stop chasing it, and the men who never wanted it dominate the dating market. Women now say, "I can't find good men." But it's not because they're gone. It's because they're no longer waiting to be chosen by people who never valued them. There is a psychological moment, more terrifying than loneliness, realizing the problem wasn't the world, it was the mirror. And modern dating has reached that moment. Women spent years hearing the same mantra. Never settle. Know your worth. You deserve more. Only accept the best. But nobody asked the deeper question. Are you someone the best would choose? For many, the answer is painful. Because the truth is this. The good men they want today are the same men they ignored yesterday. The stable man. The humble man. The consistent man. The respectful man. The loyal man. The steady man. The man who didn't give butterflies, but gave security. The man who didn't create drama, but created peace. The man who didn't excite the nervous system, but healed it. But healing wasn't desirable in a world addicted to chaos. The psychology is brutal. People raised on emotional turbulence mistake stability for boredom and safety for lack of passion. So they choose chaos again and again until chaos breaks them. Now women look in the mirror and see the consequences. The years lost to toxic love, the emotional exhaustion, the declining pool of stable men, the fractured self-esteem, the growing loneliness, the creeping fear of regret. The mirror shows something else, too. An uncomfortable truth about why good men no longer approach. Men now evaluate women the same way women evaluated men. Does she bring peace or chaos? Does she bring gratitude or entitlement? Does she bring respect or criticism? Does she bring partnership or expectation? Does she offer value? Or does she simply demand it? And when men began asking these questions, the dating market changed forever. Women used to do the choosing. Now men do the filtering. Not loudly, not arrogantly, not with resentment, but with quiet, deliberate caution. Because good men are no longer willing to lose themselves, to love someone else. Now the mirror grows darker. Women realize they aren't competing with other women. They're competing with a man's peace. And peace does not lose. Because peace doesn't argue. Peace doesn't criticize. Peace doesn't shame. Peace doesn't betray. Peace doesn't demand more. Peace doesn't fight. Peace quietly sits in the corner of a man's life and whispers, "Stay with me." And when a man chooses peace, he doesn't look back. This is why modern women say they can't find good men, not because men disappeared, but because men discovered that solitude offers something most relationships no longer do. Peace that doesn't need permission to exist. Every generation witnesses a shift. Sometimes it's slow, like erosion. Sometimes it's violent, like a snapped rope. And sometimes it's silent, yet irreversible. This shift is the silent kind. For decades, women were told, "You can do better. He's not enough. You deserve the world. There will always be someone better." Men heard this message too, not directly, but through the consequences. They watched women trade emotional safety for excitement, respect for attention, stability for thrill, loyalty for spectacle, and the pendulum swung. For years, women held all the options, all the leverage, all the choice. They decided who was worthy, who was interesting, who deserved attention, who earned affection. But pendulums don't stay on one side forever. Gravity always pulls back. And now, the leverage has shifted. Silently, permanently, because modern men learned something women didn't expect them to learn. Choosing themselves is more rewarding than chasing someone who compares them to a fantasy. Men aren't fighting for validation anymore. They're not proving worth. They're not competing for attention. They're not auditioning for affection. Instead, They're building lives that feel good, with or without a partner. And the moment a man becomes fulfilled on his own, the dating market tilts. A woman once had dozens of choices. Now she has fewer. Not because she lost value, but because men gained awareness. Awareness of emotional cost. Awareness of manipulation. Awareness of disrespect. Awareness of their own worth. So the pendulum swung. Women who once ignored good men now chase their ghosts. Men who once chased love now chase freedom. Women who once filtered men now feel filtered. Men who once begged for attention now ignore it. It's a reversal nobody predicted. A reversal built on silence, not hatred. But the darkest part is this. When a man learns how peaceful life is, without emotional chaos, he becomes nearly impossible to destabilize. A peaceful man can't be manipulated. A peaceful man can't be guilt. A peaceful man can't be rushed. A peaceful man doesn't fear loneliness. A peaceful man doesn't chase uncertainty. Women ask where the good men went. They didn't disappear. They became peaceful. And peace doesn't chase. There is always a moment in every story when the truth can no longer hide. A moment when the world stops pretending and starts revealing. For modern dating, that moment has arrived. Women sit across from therapists, friends, podcasters, and ask the same question. Why can't I find a good man? Where did they all go? What changed? Why does dating feel impossible now? And the answers are never spoken plainly, because plain truth wounds deeper than lies. But here is the truth. Good men didn't vanish. They evolved. They woke up. They rebuilt. They recalibrated their standards. They refused disrespect. They prioritized their mental health. They learned solitude wasn't punishment. It was protection. And the truth women fear most? Good men are not waiting for them anymore. Good men are choosing themselves. This is the reckoning. The end of the era where men were expected to tolerate anything, just to earn affection. The end of the era where men chased women, who only wanted them after losing someone toxic. The end of the era where men tried to fix people, who didn't want to be healed. The new era is different. Men now ask, does she bring peace? Does she bring stability? Does she speak with respect? Does she appreciate effort? Does she value partnership? Does she add to my life, or subtract from it? And suddenly, the dating market shifted from, what can a man do for me, to, what do I offer a man who already has peace? Women who bring peace still find love easily. Women who bring humility are still chosen quickly. Women who bring respect still attract loyalty. Women who bring stability still inspire devotion. But women who bring chaos, intentional or unintentional, now find themselves alone. Not because they don't deserve love, but because the men who used to tolerate chaos learned how to live without it. This is the reset, not the end of love. Not the death of relationships, not the destruction of dating, but a rebirth. Because the truth is simple, love will return. When peace becomes the priority of both people, not just one. Good men haven't left forever. They're just waiting for someone who understands one essential truth. Peace is the new currency, and only those who honor it will be welcomed into the life of a man who had to lose everything before he finally found himself. To every amazing listener still here, if this touched you, if it opened your eyes, if it made you think deeply about love, peace, and worth, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps this message reach more people who need clarity, truth, and deeper understanding. You are the reason these stories continue. Thank you for being here.